Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth-running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found the information on last week's show, Secrets of Building a High-Performance, Self-Accountable Culture, informative. If you are unable to join us and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on our YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. If you'd like to receive notifications when our podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. If there are topics you'd find beneficial or questions you have, please feel free to reach out to me at media@abandp.com. Now, let's learn a little bit about our guest today. Tish Squillaro is founder and CEO of Candor. Since 2007, Candor has partnered with organizations around the world, from early-stage growth companies to global Fortune 500s of various industries, ranging from tech to media. Her most recent clients include AT&T, AppNexus, Datorama, Salesforce, Tiva, and IBM. Tish empowers leaders and teams to make the right decisions for the health and success of their businesses. As an award-winning author, Smart CEO, Philadelphia Brava Award winner, University of Pennsylvania grad, and a guest speaker on radio, TV, webinars, and workshops, Tish is dedicated to delivering action-oriented strategies that drive long-term results. So Tish, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Candy, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you. I always ask before we get into the actual topic for you to just tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you actually got into your field.
A little bit about me. Well, I have had my company for about 20 years, so I feel as if I have tons of stories and examples to help people because of all the culmination of different businesses that I've worked with. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, grew up in New York City. I have 2 teenagers, so that's a whole other story and other drama I'm sure I could share with others. 2 beagles, so I have a dog owner. And something people didn't know about me is my first business out of college was a dog daycare and boarding called Doggy Roll Daycare. And so I like to think I went from dogs challenges to company challenges without the poopy bags. No poopy bags. So that's my sense of humor. I love to have humor in all that I do because I do think life is challenging. And if you can at least laugh at yourself, you're going to get through it a lot easier.
Right. So how did you start helping business owners with, the issues that they have? And I know we'll get into more what those issues could be, but how did you even become, a long-term entrepreneur helping people like me?
It was by accident. I wish I could say I had a path when I was young. This is what I wanted to be. I started the business right out of college, not even knowing what entrepreneur meant or how to spell it for that matter. And I just loved the diversity of working on different things. I feel like I get bored quick. So I don't love routine. I love the diversity and challenges, and I'm a problem solver. And I hate the word no. So when I looked at all the different things that I could do well, I figured, problem solving, working with young companies like my own, having grown one, and now in one forever. I don't think I've ever gotten a paycheck from someone. So I've always had my own business. I feel I relate well. So I do appreciate what someone's going through and the fears they may have and the uncertainty that you have in your own business. And I become their partner. Even if it's short term, I become a partner to someone, and it's lonely when you don't have someone to talk to. So that's how and why I do what I do.
Perfect. That's a great way, a reason why to even be helping people, right? To help them be successful. That's why I like to have this podcast too, to educate people on different topics to help them be successful. So I definitely wanted to have this conversation today. It sounded like an interesting topic. And I wanted to start off first. I saw that you have a HeadTrash series. So what is that book series about?
So HeadTrash is the number one challenge I think most companies have and plaguing most leaders is decision making, right? When we're making decisions, No matter how much we like to say our emotions are not part of it, we are emotional people. We're humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
The biggest difference between
Right.
artificial intelligence and us is that we actually have emotions. So we don't want them to
Mm-hmm.
go away, but we do need to manage them. And
Mm-hmm.
in working with many clients, I started to see a trend that there was always this some emotion that got in the way of a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me 3 years to write this book, the first book, which was what are the emotions that get in the way? And I started out with 12, so it was a little bit larger. But as I started to think through and unpack where these emotions come from, really seven were the ones that landed in the top tier, where I
Mm-hmm.
felt, okay, the root cause of everyone's challenge is from one of these seven. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the series. It talks about these seven, and they're everyday emotions, by the way. So when people think about, well, I don't have head trash, yes, you do, because if you have the emotion control, insecurity, arrogance, paranoia, anger, fear, or guilt, you've got one of my head trashes. And what
Mm-hmm.
the book series talks about is how it goes from a healthy emotion of control, which is boundaries and qualitative work and some sort of infrastructure, to micromanagement. Well, when it goes to micromanagement, that's actually not healthy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we wrote two books with that. One was the identifying it and seeing how it interacts with you from a business setting. And when I promoted the book, there was this constant piece of feedback. Well, if I don't have it, but I know I'm working with or living with someone else who has it, how do I work with them?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, everyone has head trash, right? We
Right.
all have it. But I did write the second book on, okay, how do you work with or deal with someone else's head trash? Because at the end of the day, a way to help your own is also to help someone's. And the
Right.
second one takes it from personal and business perspective, because
Mm-hmm.
we can have connections to people in our home life just as much as in our professional life where it impacts us. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I made it more broad for the second one. But yeah, that's the series. It's about decision making, allowing your emotions to be part of the decision, but not the actual decision maker.
Right. Well, I totally understand that concept too. I'd actually written a chapter for a book once that was the book was called Navigating Entrepreneurship. And my thing was telling kind of my story and some of the experiences that I had had. And I wanted to share it with others so they hopefully learn from my mistakes. Right. And one of the things that I talked about was having to balance like making decisions with your head, but also having your heart somewhat involved, because sometimes I let my heart take over and I made some decisions that didn't really support the business. I mean, it was helpful to the client, maybe, it was allowing them, to have some things that I probably shouldn't have done. Right. But I was trying to be helpful. And I think part of that behind that too is you probably want to still be liked by people. You don't want people to think you're, mean or tough or only thinking about money or whatever, because I've had people say that. But that's one of the balances I have to find too, is allowing my heart to be involved, but not so much that it's not a wise decision.
Look, I do think our heart and our emotions are partnerships in
Mm-hmm.
what make us who we are. And that also makes us different.
Mm-hmm.
However, when we're not focused on what we're trying to accomplish as the end game and then work backwards to what we think we need to do, when we work on the here and now emotional impact or the reaction we're having, we're probably not
Mm-hmm.
even sure anymore what we're trying to do. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just bringing that clarity. And that's why I called it head trash, because it is trash. It's the
Mm-hmm.
junk between your ears that clouds your judgment, doesn't make things as crisp and clear as they can be. And you know what
Mm-hmm.
happens when you can't see in front of you? You're going to
Right.
misstep, right? And so we don't
Right.
want to misstep as often. And look, you're not going to ever be perfect. I learn every day from all my clients and every company that I work with. I'm always open and humbled enough to realize I'm going to learn something.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you stop learning and stop working on ourselves that I think is the most scary element, because we're a
Right.
work in progress. So the things I work on with people are ongoing. I say it's like a relationship. You don't do everything right the first month and just expect it to stick for the next 30 years. You're
Right.
working on it for 30 years and on some.
Right.
So same thing with your emotions. They'll stay with
Mm-hmm.
us. And I do offer people an idea of understanding what seven emotions impact us and which ones are the strongest. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
offer to your listeners, it's an index that I created strictly for people to become more self-aware. It's at
Perfect.
HeadTrash911.com. So it's simple. You go to the book's website, HeadTrash911.com, and it takes about 15 minutes to complete. When you're done, you'll get this output, which takes all 7. So control, insecurity, arrogance, paranoia, anger, fear, and guilt, and ranks them for you. So everyone loves numbers and data. So it ranks them for you and then tells you the top 2, which I give a fun name to. It's the head trash cocktail. You have a cocktail of 2 different sort of emotions that when they get together, they actually get stronger than you. You got to be careful. And I write different tips on what you can do. It's complimentary. There's no cost. There's no marketing behind it. I really did it because I think the more we're self-aware, the better we are going to be at making decisions for ourselves. And that means if we're making good decisions for ourselves, we're also making great decisions for everyone around us.
Right. Yeah, that's so hard to do sometimes, but sometimes it's not so difficult. But I think we're all in that boat sometimes where there are decisions that somewhat are a little bit difficult to make. Hence why some people procrastinate too, right? They don't want to have to make that decision. So I think this is a great topic for us to discover. So as we're talking then, and we're talking about executives and having to make these, decisions, how would you help executives really understand the challenges they're facing and how to maybe move forward to kind of conquer those?
Well, I'll give you an example because many times the leader is not even sure what they're trying to solve for, or they think they're trying to solve for something. And when we unpack it, it's not even that. An example was a CEO hired me to help with this big disastrous loss of a client that they had. And they felt that it was the account team's fault. So I come in and the CEO says, I need you to spend time with the account team. I'm not sure where we lost this account. It was one of our largest, but I'm not sure if they're client focused as well or listening. I said, okay, let me unpack and let's figure it out. Met the team, spent time with the CEO. And what really came out of that assessment was the CEO lost the account. The CEO had so much fear in all of the account managers that none of them felt comfortable raising the real issues, addressing things that were happening at the customer fast enough. They hid stuff for fear of the CEO, exploded a lot, was very emotional. They like to call it passion. I like to call it emotional. And what happened was it frightened everyone to bring up anything. So there was no discussions about things happening. There was no brainstorming of how to repair stuff. And so I remember the day I sat down and I said to the CEO, you lost this multi-million-dollar client. I'm not saying your team was not playing a part in this, but you were ready to blame everyone else. But the truth is, you fostered such fear among your team. They were so nervous to make mistakes and so nervous to bring things up that they didn't.
Right.
And by not doing it, we lost the client. So I really think you need to look at how you're engaging with the team and fostering the open door dialogue of truth and honesty of what's going on. Because if they are going to hide stuff from you, you're going to lose more than one client.
Right.
And that's
so important to talk about the team too. I would love you to maybe explain how they can make sure that their decision making is not negatively impacting their team too. I mean, not everyone's going to like every decision you make, right? We understand that, but that's a great example of he probably or she didn't realize kind of the fear that was being instilled and the impact that was having.
I'm sure they thought it was a sense of urgency and passion and commitment to client success. However, what it really fostered was, let's be afraid. And no one was able to work. And I do think whenever I'm working with an organization, it's never one person that's fault or wins the success. It's a group effort. And so I usually spend a lot of time getting to know who the players are that are actually part of the decision making or on the project. And when you're thinking about how to engage when it's more than yourself, especially as the leader, you have to also be mindful that people like to be heard. They probably don't want to lead and make the tough decisions or be responsible for the tough decisions, but they actually want to be heard or know they can speak, have a view, offer suggestions. And so when working with your teams, though you may know the right answer all the time, right? There's that control a little bit. You do think you know the right answer because you've done it before and no one's going to love the business like your business. So it's really hard sometimes for the owner to separate themselves from their love of the business to what actually the business needs to do.
Right.
You need to be able to allow people to feel an openness that they have a voice too. And that doesn't mean you listen and do what they say, because I also find that's an issue with consensus decision making. That's not good either. But you do want people to feel that this is a collaboration of conversation. And I do think communication for any business owner is something that's hard for them to transition from being the sole person who needs to know everything. Because when you start your business, you are the only one that matters. You are the only one that knows everything. You probably are the only one doing everything. And then you start to hire great people, or people you thought were great, right? You hired them for a reason, but then you don't tell them stuff. You don't include them in the decision making. You don't bring them along the path of the journey. And then you wonder why, when you get to the end zone, the only person involved was you. And that's not how you scale a business, right? So I do think some of those areas of grooming yourself from being the person that does everything to actually hiring and empowering others to feel like they're part of the process, that's a tough transition for folks.
It definitely is. But as we all know too, if you want to have the business grow beyond yourself, you have to be able to delegate and have other people take control and realize they are going to make mistakes sometimes, right? And hopefully you'll be able to kind of recover through, it's not a major loss. Like it would be difficult if you lost, your top client, but it's not the end of the world, right? It could be painful, but just letting them make those little mistakes at first and learn from those, right? And then hopefully they're building their confidence so that they can do things without you having to look at every single decision that has to be made.
Which is very true, Candy, because delegating is one of the major adjustments if control turned out to be your head trash, right? Because control, you can talk yourself into why you should be making all the decisions, why you need to be in every meeting that your company has, why you're smarter than everyone else in the room. And until you start to learn how to delegate and give people a chance to grow and learn from their own mistakes or how they were doing it, it becomes very difficult for them to actually feel empowered to take the chance. And so I do offer a suggestion on how to learn the steps of delegating. I call it the Tupperware China column list. And what you need to do is look at things from Tupperware and look at things from a China perspective. So to describe China, if it falls, it shatters. And it might be that one client that if you lost it, your doors are shutting because you can't bounce back. So there are things that are really that important that you should stay involved. And I'll put those in the China column. Then you got stuff that's Tupperware. Tupperware does not shatter when it falls. It can be dented and you can still use it. And so those are the things that, you know what, they won't get done like I would do it, but they actually will still get done. And that's your Tupperware column. As you think about things that you need to start to give others involvement with, we don't even want to say you're giving it to them, others involvement with, put the columns up and think about what's China and what's Tupperware. Because if you get comfortable with the Tupperware, you know that they're going to make a little mistake here and there to learn, but we're not going to fall apart from it.
Right.
If you're going to delegate China and anybody, including yourself, makes the mistake, it's a big deal. So maybe that one is not the first thing you give someone that you're teaching how to do stuff. And I have a ton of people who still call me, go, my Tupperware China list, it's still today, is foolproof. Why? Because I realize that not everything is China. That's the other thing. It's a self-awareness. And you just brought that up, Candy, when you said not everything's going to tilt the world off of its filter, right? So not everything is going to fit in that China column when you start to break it down. That'll help you overcome that fear you're going to have of, I got to be in every meeting. I should sign every document. I should meet every new hire, because all you're going to do is slow the rest of the company down.
Right. That's a great analogy. I haven't heard that one before. I mean, you kind of have the concept before, but yes, I have never heard it between like the China and Tupperware. I love that. But what would you say then too about, if you were the entrepreneur, the only one that was there for a while, and now you've got staff that you have actually empowered and you've given them the permission, and they might make mistakes, but they actually have the capability to do it, but the customers still want to talk with you, thinking you're the decision maker. Like, what would you tell an entrepreneur about that side of the equation?
One, get the facts. I think you need to go into that conversation with not trying to prove the customer's wrong, but understand what happened. And as every person in a business knows scaling a business is about patience and learning. And our commitment is there to do the right things for them. But at times, nothing's perfect. But we're going to do our best to always improve and be your partner. And go back to the relationship portion of it. But you need to know your facts. Like if something fell down and you had a low performer, well, that's probably our fault for putting a low performer in that position. We have to take ownership of that and maybe make that change and say to that customer, you know what, you've highlighted something I missed. Bobby Joe is not on your account anymore. We're actually going to give you someone else. I'm going to introduce you to them, and I am fully involved until they're transitioned. You do have to make the customer feel as if you have their back and you support them. But I do think when you come at it that way, we're all human. We realize people make mistakes. As long as you're willing to work with me and accept the owners that you have a hand in what's happened, then it usually goes well. I mean, at least that's been my approach, and that's worked out. And when I see people try to fight the customer and say, we're right, you don't know what you're talking about, those don't go as well.
Well, I guess I was thinking even before there's even a situation that happens where there might be, a mistake, and it's just that the customer is so used to talking to the owner, right? So if they get one of your employees and they're like, oh no, I have to talk to, the owner of the company. Like, that's where I'm wondering, how would you kind of get that part to change too, so that the customer realizes that the employee can help and make those decisions?
As the business owner, again, my Tupperware China columns definitely come up, because if it's a very big customer that I have had involvement with from the beginning, I need to reassure them I haven't disinterested myself with them. If it's a issue on our end, before I'd have that person try to resolve it, I make sure they're the right employee to do that. Because if they're not the right person, I'm not going to allow them to actually have that difficult conversation. But let's just say they are. They are a hard worker, they're dedicated, and they made a mistake. I would go back, and if they engage me in an email that said, hey, I need to talk to you, I'd say, look, I want Mary or Bob to have this conversation. I have 100% faith in them. This was a glitch in our system, and we will not let it happen again. But I need them to have ownership of this account. This is your account manager that I have handpicked for you. You have to trust that is the right person. I would put it back on that, but I would first check all my facts, which is 1, is this a China or Tupperware client? 2, is the employee capable of handling this? And if all those things check out, then I would support my employee by giving them the ability to actually own this account.
Perfect. So when you're talking about, your book series, HeadTrash, what are 1 or 2 points that you want them to understand what they're about that would help them in their business?
1 is that they're very relevant to everyday interaction. So remember, we're going to do whatever our business is, whatever level in the organization you're in, and whatever sort of, industry it's from. Everything we do is with others, right? So it's about interaction, how you make someone else feel, how you impact them. And knowing that you're owning a decision about something, right? It could be something at home, it could be something at work, it could be something with your friendships, but you have the ability to be making choices. We all do. So it's very relevant in that anything the book is going to offer you, and the 7 emotions that we've highlighted, are things you definitely will feel and will play an important part in how you're perceived and how you actually will get to your results. Don't be shy of them and don't fight that. The reality is these emotions, control, insecurity, arrogance, paranoia, anger, fear, and guilt, are in all of us, and they are healthy. So I don't even want you to think we should flush all of these emotions out. I want you to savor them and keep them. What I don't want them is to be stronger than your ability to make a good decision. And so all you'll get from this is recognizing these are things that happen. They sometimes happen without me even realizing. Now I've got tools to realize that they're happening and a focus on what I can actually do to manage myself so they don't manage me. Don't be afraid of it, because it's very, I mean, everything I do and all the work I've always, focused on, to me, including the dog daycare that I started, was very practical stuff. I'm a practical person. And if it's overly complicated, I'm not going to do it. So I base everything on what I would do. And if it's overcomplicated, I'm not going to look at it. This is not overly complicated, and it's very practical.
Perfect. So then how can someone actually deal with their self-defeating thought patterns and turn them around to be more productive?
So that would be an insecurity, right? So one of the emotions is insecurity. And it's challenging because if you have it, it's you also constantly reinforcing to have it. So it's that
Mm,
voice in your head that makes you second guess yourself. It's the voice that when someone says, gee, that was a wonderful presentation, you go, oh my God, it was terrible. And you start rankling off all the things that didn't go well. Or if it's when you're in a room with a group of people and you look around and you say, oh my God, I shouldn't even be here. This is like way above me. I'm going to just zip up and say absolutely nothing. That's the safe thing. It's that inability to have confidence in yourself. And the first thing I always recommend is accept compliments because they don't come often. So enjoy them. The second is really write a list for yourself. And I'm a big old fashioned writer because then I feel like it sticks. When you just think about it, it can actually leave your ears and you never see it again. But if you write it down, there's a purpose to it. Write down everything you do well first. Then write
mm,
everything you want to work on. I think we reverse that in life. We write down all the things we have to work on, and then we get to what we do well. Let's get the list of things that we do well, because
mm.
that'll reinforce ourselves that we are not as bad as we thought. And the
Right.
last, which is, more of a personal opinion, but I do have it in the book. I do think we have to stop comparing ourselves to others. And
Mm,
social media has made it very easy to compare
right.
ourselves to anyone and everyone who wants to put themselves out there. And that is a very difficult thing because there's always someone who's going to do something better or different or you're
Mm,
not doing. And so all of a sudden then you feel like you've got this problem. And for those that have FOMO, which is this new thing about not being involved with everything and missing out, it
mhm.
actually heightens your insecurity that you are so bad that you're not even on this LinkedIn or you're not even on this group, or why am I not invited? So I do think it's made it very hard because everything about everyone is so accessible now. I don't know if we need to
Mm,
know all that stuff. So stop comparing. Come up with your own
right.
wish list of things you want to accomplish. Come up with goals that you believe you will get a lot out of. Stop comparing them to everybody else.
Mhm. That's so good. Well, and I think too, if somebody is sitting there about to make a decision and then they realize like, oh, I'm coming at this from fear or, control or, some of the different things that you were talking about, the seven different things that can be affecting your decision making, like what would you tell someone how to actually change the process of making that decision? Because now they've identified, yes, I realize I'm in fear. Like what would be that next step?
Well, if we use fear as an example, fear is to me a stop sign. Think of a red stop sign. You're not moving. That is the unhealthy head trash fear. The caution, which is the yellow blinking sign, that's the healthy fear because that's you proceeding, moving forward, but you do it cautiously. There's
Mhm.
always a replacement of some emotions, tendencies that you should be looking at. That's why it's not removing fear, but go from the stop sign to the caution sign again.
Mhm.
Because what fear does is stop you in your tracks of making you, I wish I did, I shoulda, coulda. And it makes you regret not trying, or it makes you feel overwhelmed by things. And look, life is overwhelming. We will be
Mhm.
afraid of certain things. There are things that I get nervous about, but how I actually get through it is I put my caution sign up. I proceed, but I do it cautiously. So if I have a big goal I'm trying to achieve, I break it down into small goals, mini
Mhm.
wins, I call them. Take something big and scary and break it into phases. Let me at least get to here and see how I do. Let me try this step. So I've broken it down from this big thing to manageable things.
Mhm.
I also want to make sure that I'm not doing it because it's easy and it's an excuse.
Mm.
Because guess what? Going through the caution sign versus the stop sign is a bunch of excuses why I shouldn't try. My caution sign says, look, I might have to slow down or look both ways multiple times, but I'm still going. So I have a
Mhm.
little extra work to do, and I've got to be ready for that. And so those are
Mhm.
ways where your emotions are going to have ways to work around them. What I like to call a replacement emotion fit in. That's all. It's instead of fear being the thing that stops me, I want to be brave. So I'm going to use caution to proceed so I can get to bravery. And
Mhm.
again, the books will have, and if you go to the website, there's this little chart I created which basically breaks down every head trash from the way fear doesn't get me to bravery, the way control doesn't get me to empowerment, the way insecurity doesn't get me to confidence. I've got to make my way there. And I give us tips to how to do that.
Mm-hmm. So if someone has finally realized, like, now I know why I'm doing this, it's because I have the fear or, whichever of the head trash emotions that they're dealing with, do you recommend then that they maybe talk, if they have a team, talk with their team and actually work through that, or be in a mastermind or have a coach? Like, obviously, instead of having to try to make that decision on their own or work through it, like, what would you tell them in terms of support to help them work through that?
So I would recommend, since the index I created is aligned to these 7 emotions and it's not a cost factor, take that first, because when I did my index and I created this, I had 100% confidence it was going to be arrogance and control for me. And it wasn't. Mine was anger and guilt. So first, let's make sure we're working on the right things. Don't make assumptions right away. We know how to achieve guessing which it is. Go take that index. It'll take you 15 minutes. Once you've been able to identify what it is, I would come up first with my own plan of what I want to do, need to do, should be doing, before I entertain it with others. When you're entertaining with others, of course, you can always get a coach. I think that's something that people love. You can join focus groups, where I know some entrepreneurs have entrepreneurial groups. People in the like-mind spaces can talk through stuff together, so you feel we're all in the same place. You could, talk to the team in the sense that, listen, I know sometimes I might micromanage. I need you all to stop me from doing that. I've sensed that I hoard information, or I like to be in every meeting. You need to help me get comfortable that you've got full control over what you should be doing. Help me understand why I don't need to be in that meeting. And so I do think there are many ways to get yourself to a healthy place. But first, make sure we know what it is we're looking at, that we understand it and believe it. Because if we don't believe it, we're never going to work on it. Right? If you don't believe you need to do certain things, do we really ever put our commitment into it? No. Right. We talk about it, but we don't do it.
So is there anything that you would like to share with the listeners that you want them to learn from this topic that I didn't ask you yet?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's something I find about myself. I have all 7 and all the time. And I don't think we should ever stop working on refining and enhancing. And you shouldn't look at yourself in any negative way, because we're always refining and enhancing. We may never get to that 100% perfect place, because I don't even know what that looks like. So I do think one is be open to always working on yourself. The second is resourcefulness and resilience. Those are very important. There are things that'll bring you down. There are mistakes we're going to still make, and we have to get past them. So my goal is always to give myself 24 hours for anything: happiness, celebration, anger, or depression, right? If I'm sad about something, I give myself a period of time to live through the cycle. Mine was 24 hours. Some people need longer. Maybe some people need an hour. But do give yourself time to get through it. But then after it, shake it. And that's that resilience, because life is challenging. We're not always going to be ready for everything. And we're not always sure where we're going. So we're going to make mistakes. But if you are self-aware and you believe in yourself and you have some resilience and resourcefulness, you'll always land on your feet. And that's the best we can ask of one another, is to land on our feet. We may not always land at the top in everything we do, but I always want to land at least on my feet.
Right. Well, and I was thinking as you were chatting with me as well about, like, are those kind of emotions, when you take that test and you find out what your top few are they kind of always what those are in your life? Or as your life kind of changes and you get older or things happen, do you see that sometimes those change?
It's a very good question, Candy. I have not seen mine change. So I do think we have a DNA to ourselves where these culprits will always be my nemesis. And it's because we've formed ways in which we're comfortable doing things, habits to which we've done stuff. And the emotions that have carved our personality and our behaviors are those emotions that are very important to us. So they're there. I don't know if we ever lose the ones that are definitely there as the ones we should watch out for. I do think we get better situationally. I think we learn certain behaviors that we could master in situations. But I mean, I use the DISC profile as another indicator a lot with my clients of understanding self-behavior and how they impact others. And those stay the same too. And for 22 years, I'm still a DI. I couldn't ever move up my S and C if I tried. So I do think we kind of are who we are. And I think that's part of the confidence we build in each other is be comfortable with who we are, but don't make it impact us negatively or others. So balance the who are we with how we're impacting someone. Balance the who are we and how we're making our decisions. But I don't know if we're going to change that much. So if we're setting out to change ourselves that much, we may be in for a very long, hard road.
Okay. Is there anything that people would be surprised to learn about like the head trash and these emotions and how they would be using them for decision making?
Probably like, why didn't I think of this? Because this is so practical, right? I mean, honestly, I'm not, someone who's brilliant and has this unique way of looking at things in a special way. I bet when people read this, they're going to go, oh my God, yes, absolutely. She's brilliant. And I'm not brilliant. It's just something that's so practical and so much basic common sense that when you start to read it, it will be an epiphany that this is something that you've already been doing. You just want to get better at. And then don't shun it because of that. I think it's the little stuff in life that we forget that become those big things that alter us into doing the right things. And that's what this is. This is basic emotions that we have every day. And quite honestly, I don't think it's brilliance. It's the same matter. I put it in an easy, uncomplicated way for someone to read it.
Yep. Well, I know this has been a great topic. I know we're getting close to the end of the time that we have together today, but I know you did mention your free offer. So I'll let you mention that again and how they can find it.
So if you are interested in taking the HeadTrash Index, please visit the HeadTrash website, which is headtrash911.com. Again, headtrash911.com. Very easy to navigate. You'll see videos and a whole storyline of how I started the book and built all the stories. But there is an index that you can take. It's 28 questions. It's multiple choice. At the end, instantly, you will get results, which again is very like me. For you DISC followers, I'm a D. I need to have instant gratification. You will get your results. Save it as a PDF for yourself. And then manage yourself based on knowing what to look out for. You can also find me at my consulting practice, which is candor-consulting.com. And anytime you would like to reach out to me, my information's on my website. Happy to entertain any conversations about the Tupperware and China or the tips that I gave you with the red stop sign and the yellow caution. I do think visuals are very helpful for people, including myself. It keeps it in memory. And so hopefully today you picked up a couple of things you can keep in your memory.
Well, like I said, I did enjoy the analogies that you had shared. And even, like you said, talking about the stop sign, but turn it into just the caution and, looking before you go type thing. I think it is helpful to kind of hear kind of those things that help prompt you when you think of that. Like, oh, yes, I don't want to stop. I want to just yield for a little bit and then make my decision and go. So that was really helpful. So thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Candy. I appreciate it.
And I do want to thank the listeners also for tuning in. Thank you for sharing your time with us. I hope you found this topic interesting and that it answered some of your questions on productive responses to business concerns and learning about the Head Trash series. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to Tish, where she had recommended you find her on her website, or you can send us a message at media@abandp.com. And would you please share our show information with those you know? I'd greatly appreciate your support. I hope you can join us for next week's topic, how to use Google Ads effectively. And please remember, you can connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. You can find the podcast posted on multiple podcast platforms, including Google, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Until next time, have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next Tuesday. Have a terrific week.